Hello, everybody, and welcome to this special little conversation that we're having here on the wonderful world of IT, service management, certifications, and all things. Well, in my little world, I think it's kind of cool. Thank you for everyone joining us everywhere from LinkedIn to Instagram, YouTube. It's good to have you with us here in the studios of IT Pro, part of ACI Learning. And the good news is it's not just going to be me talking about some of the top things, but my name is Chris Ward. I'm an edutainer here at ACI Learning, and you might see me in a lot of the ITIL 4 training, project management, governance like COBIT, certification area. And it's exciting to be able to come to you live here and talk to you out in social media land. And like I said, but I'm not alone. Joining me in the studio virtually is going to be Mark Bradley from Flex Era. He is a product manager there. And also, because he's kind of shy to admit this, but one of the co-authors of the ITIL 4 Digital and IT Strategy book. So if you are a strategic leader and you pass the exam, you can thank this guy right here on my right side. Mark, good to have you with us.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be back. I'm looking forward to today's discussion.
Yes. Exciting news has been coming up recently for those of us in the IT service management community. I think it's safe to say, Mark, that in this community, the number one certification or way of showing that you are I don't want to say somebody that works well in this industry is the formerly Information Technology Infrastructure Library, now known as ITIL. And there has been a couple of interesting announcements that have been made. They were hinted at, I'll admit, back in, I would say about a good 4 or 5 months ago, but they kind of announced this. First is going to be the CPD, the continuing product development or professional development part of your certification. No longer are you able to just take an ITIL certification and then you are certified forever. So you will always have that certification. PeopleCert has made a big move to where you will now have to either utilize what a lot of other frameworks and organizations do, which is come up with continuing education credits, or they want you to go out and spend the money to retake the exam. So that's one thing that we wanted to talk about. And by the way, for those of you joining us, do you have questions about that? Do you have any thoughts about that? Make sure that you go into the comments area, just type in your questions. We'll get to see those in real time, and either Mark or myself will be happy to answer that. But Mark, just some initial thoughts on this. I mean, you obviously were involved in ITIL 4 in that transition to the digital and IT strategy. What's your initial take on what PeopleCert's doing?
Sure. So you definitely picked a topic to stir the hornet's nest, so to speak,
Of course.
and you hit it hard, hit it out of the park. No, it's been interesting. I've been following it just like everyone else. As one of the authors, typically you're brought in when they want to do a new book, and you work on the outline. You figure out, what parts of it you can contribute, and then you go off and you do that. In terms of the framework and the certifications, you're building this material for certification, but in terms of the plans of how they're going to roll that out, how the certification process works, I believe it's a whole nother group, it's a
Mm,
whole nother area.
right.
But being involved, I want to follow too. I want to see what it's all about. To me, it just feels like they're trying to keep things relevant, keep things current, have confidence, so that when an employer hires someone that's been certified, knowing that there's a process in place to keep people current.
Right.
I think that's the approach.
Yeah. And I think I'll be honest, my opinion, having been involved in the industry for a while, certified in the previous versions and things like that. But I think there is a right way to do that, and I think that there is a not so, I won't say wrong way, but a not so right way to do that. And I think that's what a lot of people have been commenting on, that this feels more like, instead of, well, we want to make sure that your certification is something that is constantly being reutilized, or I would say reutilized, but you're utilizing your skill sets in a way that means you didn't go pass a test, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Then do you still know this information? And I think where I find it difficult is that before people search, and a little bit of history and background, most people understand that Axelos was the organization, at least through ITIL version 3, and more into the beginning of ITIL 4, where they kind of handle all that. But PeopleCert, of course, acquired them, merged in with them, and there is this, you're going to be changing. I'm sure there's going to be an ITIL, we would say version 5, or not versioning, but ITIL 5 or ITIL, whatever they want to call it, probably in the next 5 to 6 years. And isn't that enough to have to recertify or go through that plan or go through that program again? What do you think about that, Mark?
No, it's a good point. ITIL continues to evolve and adapt to the changing needs. So I think they're trying to probably bridge the gap between what we have today, keeping people relevant and current, and then when future books come out that address the new needs. Um, you know, I think when you think back between when the books the amount of time between our industry has changed tremendously.
Yes.
And to take a snapshot in time, build a certification, introduce ITIL 4. Now, eventually here, maybe it's ITIL 5. I don't know. Um, but just trying to keep up with the times, I think, is the biggest challenge.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Now, for those of you just joining us, we're talking here all things IT service management, one of the big news items that has come across most people's desks. Or in the case of me, I got a nice handy dandy email. And I know I'm old school. I'm printing my my email, but this is what it says: Dear Chris, in connection with the certification that you previously obtained from PeopleCert, we'd like to advise you that you now must do this. I mean, they didn't say it exactly that way, but they're saying it. And that any certifications that are under ITIL 4, their prints, MSP, basically any of the global best practices programs they have, requires you to recertify in either one of two ways. You take the certification exam again. So, for example, if you only got ITIL 4 Foundation, in 3 years, you would have to take the ITIL 4 Foundation. The issue is, though, for some of us who are very, very heavily invested into these certifications, I obviously, as a trainer, as a consultant, I use these every day. And so for me to go back and pay the amount of money it takes to be still a managing professional or a strategic leader, could be something that I look at and say, hey, I just don't have the finances for that. I don't have the capability. Now, the good news is one of the comments that they make is that if you do not choose to renew, so this is official PeopleCert, I'm reading this, you will still be included on the successful candidates register and the verification service, but an asterisk, basically, a note will be placed indicating that you still need to renew and you are not current. Now, interestingly enough, I'm just wondering, Mark, if that's enough for somebody to say, well, okay, that's fine. In fact, we have Richard from Facebook, by the way. Thanks, everybody who's been joining us. Richard says, do you think a lot of people will end up just letting that certification slide because until there are new requirements or something else? What do you think, Mark?
Um, I see the pain point, especially from an instructor where you're probably 6 months to a year ahead of when things really start to take off on a new certification or a new course, because of the pre-training that you do and whatnot. So I could see where if 3 years may sound like a long time, but 1 year's already been taken away because you were an early adopter to it. Um, I it's hard to know what they were thinking. I think one of the things I would have considered, that you see in some of the other certifications are continuous credits. So if you attend, certain training courses above and beyond, or you attend certain webinars or, lectures, if you will, and they've pre, you know, worked with them to get some credits that can be handled. I think something like that might have been an approach that I think probably been more acceptable.
Yeah.
But again, not I wasn't in a room, so I wasn't sure all the clear.
Yeah. So, by the way, both Mark and I want to say it right now. We didn't make this decision. So, for those of you who are already typing the paragraph long, what were you thinking? We weren't asked on that. Now, interestingly enough, and this goes back to the question that we got from Richard in on Facebook, and my producer reminded me to remind you, hey, don't forget to chat into the comments. This is live. Ask your questions of either myself or Mark or both of us. We promise that we will give you an answer either immediately, or if it's something that we have to look into, we will do our best to get that information back to you. And so Richard had said, hey, do you think a lot of people will end up just letting their certification slide? And to piggyback in onto what Mark just said, I think that there will be quite a few people that are doing it primarily because they either don't have the time nor the money to be able to maybe maintain those. Now, for somebody like myself, who's an instructor, a trainer, a consultant who does this all the time, well, then that becomes, I figure, more of a business cost. And that's something that I'm probably going to have to look at and say, is it worth maintaining this? But to kind of also dovetail in on to what you said, Mark, is that you said, what about like continuing credits? Well, according to this, starting in March, so about a month from now, they're going to announce the way to log CPD points. So these would be these continuing professional development. Some organizations call them continuing education units, CEUs or CPEs, whatever you want to call them. You attend a class, you take another cert, do something like that, and that gives you the credit that you need. Now, Mark, in your years of working in ITIL and in the space, I know that there's been times when it's been kind of nice that, hey, there's a 5-6 year window from when you have to go back in and start actually taking the test, right?
Yes, yes. Admittedly, I'm not a great test taker.
Hmm.
I have to study harder, write my notes. I have to write it all out. Um, so yeah, the idea of postponing a test 5 years, that's appealing to me. And I think the CEUs and the CDPs, those sort of things are probably a little bit easier for me, so I can attend all the classes and still keep current on everything that's happening, and still trying to push the edge of the envelope on where do we go next, and
Definitely.
still embracing the methodologies.
Yeah, definitely. And because I'm one of the first to admit that, hey, I'm not saying that asking for some way of showing continuing growth, learning, and education in a field isn't important. But what I have seen is this announcement that comes on, by the way, the tail of them announcing that the prices are going to go up on the exams. And now you can buy the materials, but now you have to buy a voucher and the book. And by the way, their video content is now something that they're talking about as well. I just think that the impression that most people in the industry are getting is this isn't all about continued growth. It's about continued growth of market share and money into the pocketbook of the organization. Rahul has a question coming in from YouTube. Hello, Rahul. By the way, anyone on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, the whole 9 yards, continue to put your questions into the chat. Mark and I are more than happy to answer them. Rahul says, can I renew my ITIL certs after the expiration date? So what it sounds like, Rahul, you're saying is, let's say you missed the cutoff. Let's say you didn't know that you were supposed to do it, and it slips. Well, remember, and again, that's why I printed it, and so I can read it, so I'm not speaking for People Cert, saying things they haven't said. According to them, is that you will have a record added or a note added to your record saying that the certification needs to be renewed. So that indicates to me, Rahul, that yes, you will be able to do that. It's just if somebody is going to go into their certification verification system, the CBS, that if you'll have an asterisk saying you're not current, you're not up to date. As soon as you go, probably, if let's say it's ITIL 4 Foundation, you go and you take that exam and pay your $400+ to do so, then that asterisk would be removed. And that's what I think we can safely assume from the printed guide here. But, that's a great question, Rahul. Appreciate that. Uh, but speaking of that, and by the way, if you guys have more thoughts on that, and by the way, even if it's just like I disagree with you, Chris, I think this or I think that, feel free, type it in the chat. Mark and I are here to answer your questions, but also to talk about another hot topic, and that is the wonderful world of sustainability. Okay, so a lot of people are saying, what's going to be the next thing in IT service management? I mean, we had digital transformation and digital disruption and digital this, and that was a big push in ITIL 4 when it was brought into play back in 2018 and into 2019. But they now have an extension certification for for ITIL 4 on sustainability. And Mark, I know that this is kind of one of your platforms that you're literally, standing up there and hooping and hollering about. Tell us a little bit more about sustainability and why that's what I, as an ITIL guy or an IT service management guy, why should I be excited about it?
Sure, sure. No, thanks for bringing up the sustainability.
Yeah,
I think, as IT people, this is our chance to be a hero. If you look at, sustainability in terms of IT, in terms of how we manage our assets, hardware, software, cloud, hybrid, if you will, um, IT's in a unique situation that we're on both sides of the coin. On one side of the coin, we're probably causing a lot of the sustainability challenges with carbon footprint. If you look at it, some of the servers, our data centers, and then migrating to the cloud, we're on one side where we're the ones kind of creating this carbon. And on the other side, we have a chance to clean it up. We have a chance to start to embrace newer technology that has the lower footprint and then figuring out ways to recycle our the infrastructure that we're retiring, and then the other part on the coin. So you had us on both sides of the coin, but then there's the rim to the coin. And I think what's happening is there's a lot of legislation that's being pushed all over the world, and I think accountability to CEOs. So when they go to broadcast their financials for the end of the quarter, they're going to have to talk about stewardship. They're going to have to talk about environmental. They're going to have to. It's that triple bottom line. And in the new certification, they talk about that. They talk about bringing that awareness. So I think we have a chance to change the industry. I think we have a chance to contribute to sustainability. And I think that certification is like spot on time, ready to go. It's net new. And we're going to hear more and more, especially when the legislation, starts to push across, in our case, the United States, but it's
right.
already in pockets of EMEA.
Yeah, EMEA's really, putting a big push in that. And what's interesting, Mark, is in my take has been on this that what we're finding is we have to do this, but we have to do this in a way that is smart and not just because it's one of those things that people can really get on board and say, yeah, we want to help our planet, we want to help sustain our companies and not have to use resources that will eventually run out or that are not renewable. But at the same time, we've also seen a history where people have used those fears and those issues to stoke politics and business in a way where they can benefit, but then they come back, 5 or 6 years, like on we would say batteries and electric power and all these things, where actually what we thought was a solution is actually becoming now an issue. Like, how do you deal with those things? I mean, mining for some of the fine metals and the rare
Yes.
metals and stuff like that. So I think that absolutely, I think that this needs to become a big conversation that we have, and empirically, not just rationally, we need to look at these things so that way. And I agree with you. I think ITIL, IT service management, could be that group that leads the charge to do this effectively and efficiently.
Yes, you hit it right on the head. That you call that green facing, where
Yes.
they're just making everything be about sustainability when it may or may not be.
Yeah.
And you're also right in some of my discussions that I've had about, okay, we have these new batteries that run these cars, but oh, by the way, we have to go back and dig into the earth to go find this new metal in order to produce these batteries, which then kind of, it sets us back.
Yeah. And
In
once again,
trying to
there's
figure.
only a limited amount of that. So what happens when you run out of that? And so but I know that there are scientists, there are people out there that are doing great work. A friend of mine does a lot of study in the area of things like using things like hydrogen powered things. There is now, because we had that um, I don't want to say scare, but maybe rightfully so, with nuclear power, where people are realizing that, hey, if done correctly, you have less of a footprint. In fact, it's the smallest of the footprints of anything, even smaller than most renewable energy areas. Instead of taking, acres and, thousands of acres and square miles of wind farms and solar, you can have something that has a smaller footprint, but yet we have to take care of it. We have to be smart. And so I think sustainability is definitely something that when you start thinking IT service management, you're right, Mark. It's not the first thing that kind of pops in your brain when you're talking about it. So, we're continuing to talk about what is the next thing in IT service management. We're talking about certifications in the world of IT service management. What's your question? Thanks for joining us live here, no matter where you're joining us. In fact, even if you just want to say, hey, it's Bill from Toronto, and enjoying the conversation, chat it into the comments area. We'd love to say hi to you folks as well. Okay, moving on to the next topic, certification. Kind of jumping back to PeopleCert here, it was announced that there is a new qualification that is going to be coming out soon called the ITIL 4 Practice Manager. Now, I know, Mark, when I first talked to you about that, you said, oh, yeah, I kind of heard about that. Well, big shout out to Luigi Ferri, who's out in Europe, who writes a lot on IT service management. He kind of did the initial, like, hey, by the way, this is coming. And it's basically, this qualification will be at the same level as strategic leader and managing professional. So it's, interestingly enough, you're going to have like the ITIL for strategic leader, which is again targeted towards the I would say C-suite directors, VP, upper muckety mucks in management, of which obviously Mark was very actively involved in creating that content. You've got the managing professional, which of course is more about management of the overall IT operational type of things. Well, now they're going to have the ITIL for practice manager, which is going to work with 15 selected practices that work in the areas of service desk, incident management, change enablement, release management, more of the day-to-day practical things. Now, I actually have again, because I'm tactile, I printed a copy up here. Our fine production crew, Megan, Caleb, Kathy, they tried to get a image of it up, but it doesn't look all that great. But definitely, if you want to search on LinkedIn, watch my space. I've actually I posted on it. Just do a search for me and Chris Ward in the LinkedIn space, and I've reposted what Luigi put out. But it's basically there's going to be 3 additional intermediate level kind of exams, kind of like the CDS, create, deliver, support, high velocity IT, direct, plan, and improve, and drive stakeholder value. But they're going to be called monitor, support, and fulfill, plan, implement, control, PIC, and collaborate, assure, and improve. And again, they're going to take the 15 practices that are selected. And what's interesting about these is they're primarily the 15 practices that are from ITIL 4 Foundation. So, Mark, what have you heard about this? What do you think about this as a potential new certification?
So I think it's interesting, and I think it's interesting for a couple reasons. One, it offers the professional more flexibility to kind of tailor their education to their specific needs, interests, and ultimately a chance to help their organization and their clients. So I like the idea of being able to, not have to do the full breadth and depth, but pick areas that are of interest to you, get certified, and then, use that new knowledge to help your company and your clients.
Yeah, definitely. Now, by the way, and here's the other little bit of news that I didn't share yet. And by the way, a big shout out to Christoph from Maine, who's joining us. Good to see you, and thanks for chatting in. Don't forget, everybody, got a question, got a comment, type it in. Doesn't matter which platform you're watching us on, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. Uh, Give us your thoughts. This is a conversation. This is not just a monologue or a dialogue. We want your thoughts as well. But back to this new not managing professional, practice manager. See, it's so new, I can't even remember the title. The ITIL 4 practice manager. Um, if you have the strategic leader and the managing professional, like I do, and you get the practice manager, you are automatically an ITIL 4 master. Okay. Now remember, Mark, remember what it took to get ITIL master over the past couple of versions? Everything you had
Yes.
to do.
Yep.
I can't remember if you ever actually went and got it. I don't think.
Yeah. Is part of HP, we had a chance to go through a variety of different programs
Hmm.
to make sure that when we were out in the field doing ITIL assessments and merging the capabilities with the technology that we were current. So I do remember going through a lot of training.
Yes. And so so think about this now. Instead of having to do that, and then remember what the ITIL master requirements used to be was you had to basically take an IT service management like operational project that you did where you implemented something from ITIL
Yeah,
and showed how by adding, let's say you added incident management as ITIL taught it, and it let's say took your incident response times down by 60%. Here's what you did. Here's how it tracks to ITIL, and so it was like a almost a dissertation, right? It was a big thing document, and you would send it off, and then a peer group of ITIL masters would look at it. You would have to defend it, and then they either gave you the thumbs up or the thumbs down. That was how it worked. It was also hugely expensive. It was like 8,000 American dollars or more. Now, if you've got that managing professional and you have that strategic leader and you get the practice manager, you gain the title of ITIL expert. That is what they have indicated as of right now. So this is something that is going to be. I don't know if it's going to push past what a lot of people say because someone made a comment on this. I saw, when it was rumored about, going, great. So even more certs I have to renew every 3 years. And so I'm wondering, what do you folks think? Chat it into the comments. Does having a new certification make you a little bit more excited about what's happening? Or are you even more unsure of what's going to happen? But Mark, what do you think? I mean, with having this, I like how you said it. It allows people to showcase their actual ITIL skills in action, right?
yeah, yeah. I think there's many organizations out there that highly value certification process, especially when they have you as the individual representing them to a client. Having that certification creates an additional bond and trust, if you will, that you know your material, you've been certified, and I'm paying you to do this work on my behalf. I think it helps in that manner. Um, but then again, more tests, more classroom, um,
Much more.
more yeah, and working through it almost feels like, it's continuing education, but it almost feels like you have to go, back to college a little bit to, take all the different courses, take all the different exams, and then, stack rank them to what you're trying to do.
Definitely. Now, interestingly enough, so we've talked about that, and so far, no questions on that one. I think a lot of people are just like, "What? I didn't know about this." Kind of shocking, but it is something new that's coming out through PeopleCert, and I think they're going to be announcing this and giving more details in the future. So I'm looking forward to see what they have to say about it. But outside of PeopleCert, and I think that something that might start happening, Mark, because of the shakeup that's happening, because of the response by many people. I mean, just open up Reddit and type in the change, people start changing thing, and it is a large amount of people that are not happy. And many of them are saying, well, maybe I'll go get something else or I'll move in a different direction. Now, one of those different directions was something that you mentioned to me, and I've heard this as well, is FinOps. So for everybody listening in that aren't familiar, Mark, run people through what is FinOps and how can that come alongside me as an IT service manager?
Sure, sure. Yeah. So FinOps is financial operations for cloud. Many companies are doing their digital transformation and they're taking their infrastructure and they're shifting it to the cloud. And you'll hear CEOs make comments about cloud first,
Hmm.
and then the bill comes.
Yes.
And when you get that bill, it will remind you. Some of us who've been around for a little while, it'll remind you of the telco bill. If you printed that one out, you'd have a huge stack. It'd be like the old mainframe reports.
Oh, right.
Um, and every day, there's a new line item that appears because someone turned on a feature or functionality that they did not know, but when they spun up a new server, it became available. But what's really exciting about FinOps is it's people trying to get together and solve this problem. We're moving to the cloud for a variety of reasons. I think COVID helped accelerate that. I think the platforms that are available has some exciting technology, and the smallest of organizations can now compete with some of the largest organizations. It kind of levels the playing field. But
Yeah.
what FinOps does is it starts to look at it in three phases. They introduce a concept called inform, which kind of helps you understand the taxonomy and the data. And then they talk about optimize, which this is the part where it kind of creates this transparency and it also coordinates the review. And then the final is operate. And so now you're scaling your processes, and then you're also supporting one another as you go forward. And I think what you're going to see is those that have been in IT service management, IT asset management, sustainability. You're starting to see all these things come together because now we're shifting our workloads, from our data centers to this cloud data center. But now we got to look at it from a little bit different lens. And I think when you start to go through these, it'll remind you of the day you took your ITIL exam, your first ITIL exam where you're like, "Hey, wait, I know we've already been doing it. I just didn't know it was called this, or I didn't
Right.
know that it was part of this framework. Now it makes more sense." I
Absolutely.
don't know.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I think that that is something that with that expertise. And by the way, there are some certifications out there. I know that there is the FinOps Foundation has something called I think it's the FinOps Certified Professional and a couple other things out there.
Correct.
Those are starting to become, big. I've started to see a lot of the guys and gals that I know on LinkedIn and in some of the other social media aspects start saying, "Hey, I just got out. I just got my FinOps certified, professional." And I, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. And I had made the comment. Remember, Mark? I said, "Yeah, I'm not into accounting and stuff like that." And you said, "Well, no, 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 no. It's not. It's not that you need to be into accounting or anything. It's just, do you want to optimize your cloud costs? do you want to continue to drive greater business value of the services that you're offering? You need to take into consideration some of these things. And so I absolutely agree that I think that this is one of those, cloud management, business management type of areas that if you're into IT service management and now you're thinking, well, I don't know if I want to go down that ITIL road and just put all my eggs in one basket, here is another opportunity for you to maybe jump into that world. And like Mark said, you're ahead of the game. You're talking to what the C-suite folks are having to deal with, because hey, their people left their EC2, instances running all weekend long at full steam, going, "Whoa, what are you doing? Look at that bill that I got." That might be helpful, and I think that that's something that most people out there. I'm just kind of curious. Anybody out there that has a question about that FinOps or sustainability, make sure you put them into the comments. We would be more than happy to answer that. Got a question coming in from Laura from LinkedIn. Hi, Laura. Thank you for joining Mark and I here on our little discussion. And Laura wants to know, what career paths can I take with ITIL certification? So this is kind of coming back to the ITIL kind of thing. I know I have my opinion, but Mark, why don't you start off on this one?
Sure, sure. No, that's a great question. Um, when you look, let's say, a digital and IT strategy, when you look at that book,
Mhm.
for those that we like to talk about those that are aspiring to be a manager, a director, a CTO, a CIO. A lot of that has to do with strategy, and a lot of it has to do with understanding and building the plan and a vision as to how you can transform the business and do this digital transformation. So when you think about getting the certification and going through the exercises, taking the exam, and then starting to apply it, one, it should increase your confidence to let you know that yes, I can go for that role, I can make that happen, and I have the information. And then I think the book will help you launch into whatever area you find most interesting because it covers a lot of topics. And I think once you figure out where, oh, this is where I want to be, then you can double click on that, go deep, go wide, and then execute on your plan and look for your career growth in that manner.
Yeah, definitely. So, great answer on that one, Mark. And Laura, I would also add, just to add to what Mark said, especially if, because what he was talking about is more at that intermediate level. I mean, that's jumping up to digital and IT strategy. What about just at the foundation level? One thing that we do here at ACI is we do a lot of training for veterans that are getting out of the military, and they need a set of skills to get them into IT or IT cybersecurity. And the number one course they take every single time is ITIL 4 Foundation. And the reason why, and it kind of comes back to the purpose of ITIL, and that is, and we can safely say this, that it's not about the tech. It's how you use the tech that matters the most. And again, we're not ignoring technology. I mean, you do need to know how to configure your routers and configure your server infrastructure or spin up instances in the cloud and do, stuff like that. I mean, that definitely is going to be a part of it. But what about the reasons behind it? Or how do you set up a service desk to reach out to the users and help the users to solve their issues? And how do you handle tickets and incidents that come in? These are all skill sets that ITIL talks about as practices, processes, value streams that you have. And so any of the stuff that you're doing at the foundation level will just take your IT skills, I believe, to the next level. So that is good. And so for a career path, hey, I say, I kind of like how Mark says, you can go deep and you can go wide. You can go, or you can, 1 mile wide and 1 inch deep, or you can just stick to one topic and just become the best of the best of the best. Those are things that, we would say that we should be able to do. And I would say that overall, it's kind of, and that kind of brings Mark into the question about like certifications in general, right? Where do certifications fit into my world as somebody that's an IT service manager or IT service professional? How has certification helped you?
Yeah, I think it helps in a couple of areas. One, it helps you gain confidence knowing that you've gone through the program, you understand the content, and you're able to validate it through a certification. The other part is a lot of times you probably have new managers that come in and out that may not fully understand what we do, but somehow they have that role. And certification is an easy way to say, "Hey, you can have confidence in me. You can count on me. I've gone through the certification. I know how this works. And oh, by the way, I've been with this company X amount of years." So the two together, if anything, gives you confidence, gives your manager confidence, gives others around you confidence that you have the info that you need to be successful.
Yeah, great comments on that. By the way, we just have a few more minutes here. If you have a question about what People Cert has done with the ITIL certifications, the new certification that they've been talking about, what other areas can you get certified? Hey, should I do Verisim? What about SIAM? What are those? Hey, throw those questions out into the comments, whether you're on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you're joining us. We're Mark and I. That's why we're here. We want to talk to you guys, and we want to hear from you. I'm as curious, probably as Mark is, about what do the rest of you think about it. I know what I think about it, and of course, I have my opinions about it. But what do you folks think? Those of you with experience, those of you with these certifications, are you going to anyone out there a managing professional going? Yep, I'm done. I'm not going to recertify anymore. I'm going to go do something else. Or is somebody going, hey, look, I got to do this for my ASACA certs. I got to do these for my PMI certification. So it's no big deal, and I've heard both sides of those arguments too. Speaking of PMI, if you are looking at another area to dive into as part of IT service management, highly recommend, I'm a little biased, but highly recommend doing something like in the world of Agile certifications. Now, I'm currently working on the PMI's Agile Certified Professional Exam Prep course, where we walk you through the areas and introduce, I like to say it's kind of the bridge to help get us traditional PMPs into the more agile world. There is the world of DevOps, if you would like to, jump into that. All these things can easily be transitioned to from being an ITIL certified individual, because there's going to be a lot of the same things. I used to kiddingly say that, anytime you go from a project management class over to the IT service management class, about the only things that change is one says project in front of it and the other one says IT service in front of it, because you're going to be talking about things like lean and waste and problem management. I actually taught today in one of my episodes on problem management in agile projects, and I used half of the things I talked about, Mark, you'll laugh, were things that I teach in my ITIL classes on IT service management and problem management. All right. So what else we got? Any other questions? Well, hey, Marco from LinkedIn. Chris, you're my hero. By the way, folks, I did not pay Marco any money from that. Great question, Mark. You're going to love this one. Noel
Okay.
from YouTube says, how about Chat GPT? How does that come into play into your industry? So I'm going to enjoy the fact that I'm just going to sit back and let you talk about this one, because
Sure.
I want to hear what
Sure.
Mark has to say too.
So I'm a huge fan of Chat GPT. I played with it a little bit. A part of me, I haven't done it yet, but a part of me wanted to take the certification information that you shared with me, and seeing the Weird Al Yankovic picture behind you and thinking, how would Weird Al Yankovic make a song on how we do our certification process? But I didn't go that far yet.
Not yet. Not. Oh, that would be fun though. I think you've given us all a chat. Now everyone's going to be like, hey, because the ITIL information's out there somewhere, and
Yeah.
that Chat GPT would just go, well, I know every single Weird Al song there is. Which, by the way, these are from Don Pizzette, our CPO, Chief Product Officer, and founder of IT Pro TV. This is all his gear. So I'm sure he'll think of a good idea, but. Besides that, Mark, what
Yeah.
else do you think about AI in IT service management?
I think I think it's game changing. I think it's game changing in terms of how our industry has now it's going to level set a lot of people who are naturally brilliant and have all the knowledge and information. Now the average person can now type and ask questions and have this open dialogue and this thread of discussion. And not only is ChatGPT learning from you, you're learning from it. And then it becomes what I'm finding is asking the right question in a way. The way it was taught to me, in some of my early discussions was imagine you're trying to introduce it to a 5 or 7 year old. And then the conversation slowly gets to the higher levels, but you at least introduce the topic to Chat GPT. And then from there you're having this dialogue. And then when you're asking it to generate code, you're asking it to put your information into a chart. Um, I don't know, so far it's been very interesting to see. One I did do a search, tell me about ITIL for digital and IT strategy. What do you know? And it spewed out great content. I was like really surprised at like, wow, one, it made the cutoff from when, they said that they did a certain time frame when they taught the AI engine, the information it needed and until now. So it looks like it made the cutoff, but I thought it did a pretty good synopsis of what it was. The other thing I like it for is, let's say you did the chat and you captured our words in a text file from this meeting or from this presentation today.
Right.
You could copy it, put it in ChatGPT, and say summarize,
Yeah.
and then it would summarize everything. Now you have your notes,
Yeah.
which that's mind blowing.
Yeah. Mostly it'd be all the smart stuff that Mark has been
No.
saying, and just cut the stuff from Chris. Say, hey, Mark, I just want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know, because Mark's the kind of guy where he's doing the stuff. He's living the real world here on IT service management, and every once in a while he gets out and writes a entire, well, not the entire book, but a big section of a book on digital disruption and digital transformation, which has been great. But Mark, hey, we're going to have to do this again real soon, okay?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Chris. Really enjoyed it. And thank you, everyone, for your questions. And looking forward for the follow ups.
All right. Well, hey, folks, that'll do it for this conversation for all things IT service management. But don't worry, all things cybersecurity is coming up. Mike Saunders on March 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, Mike Saunders, all things cybersecurity. And I can't believe I'm saying this, Tech NATO's 300th episode live. This ain't no recording. It's live, baby. Coming up March 21st at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Chris Ward on behalf of everybody here at ACI. Thank you so much. See you next time.